We just heard Black Mastermind from Monster Magnet's Spine of God. This is Requiem Metal Podcast. I'm Mark.
And I'm Jason.
And this week, we have an executive producer rather close to your heart.
Oh, yeah.
Close to your DNA.
Close to my DNA. That would be Miss Jill Hundey, my sister, who's a avid fan of our podcast.
My sister would never, ever support the show. So.
Yeah, I've been feeding her mixtapes for many, many years, and she seems to enjoy a lot of it. I know early on she was a big Bride and Dark Tranquility fan. But,
well, at least our mom didn't send us money.
Yeah, that's true. It's nothing as sad as quite as sad as that. But this goes back to the days when I used to bring my Slaughter and Warrant tapes to my dad's house, and we'd rock them out on Walkman and stuff, and kind of have like fake bands in the bedroom and stuff. But our dad, Pete Hundey, he's a hard rocker. He used to bust out Jukebox Hero and some of that kind of stuff, and
good times.
Yeah, so tonight it's a satanic drug thing that most of you wouldn't understand, according to Monster Magnet.
Not the satanic rites of Drugula.
No,
but,
although I would venture to say that Just Osborne probably busted a Monster Magnet record out or two in his youth, I would imagine. And the song you heard, Black Mastermind, comes from the debut Spine of God. They actually had an EP, a self-titled EP that came out before that in 1990, but it's kind of like Caius Retch. It's just not like it's terribly essential.
Wasn't really there.
Yeah, and this is the first like totally fully realized work of art from them. And what's interesting about Monster Magnet from our perspective is you were I guess a brief Monster Magnet fan back in your late high school days, right?
Oh yeah, I mean this came out this
is 91. 91. And then Superjudge is 92, 93 I think officially.
Yes, I was like a junior, senior in high school. So this was right in my formative years when this came out. And so this was like right in, I mean, it was definitely, I was entrenched in, death metal and extreme stuff. But
we hadn't fully left it the sort of mainstream.
Well, there was always, like hanging out with a bunch of people. They don't necessarily want to hear, an Entombed record of Beherit or something. Yeah. So it's like,
so throw a Helmet on or Monster Magnet
exactly.
or Clutch.
And it was like, right at the end of, I guess it was kind of at the beginning of the huge glut of all the grunge stuff, which first
Nirvana broke in 91. So
a couple years of that was, it was okay, but then it just kind of got ridiculous. But this is one of those bands that I think kind of like broke down a lot of barriers with people. They didn't necessarily want to buy it, but they wouldn't bitch if it was on.
Yeah, for sure. And the band itself, I'll give you the lineup from Spine of God, and then there'll be a little tweak on Superjudge. But the main guy, the vocalist and guitar player, band leader, main songwriter, is Dave Weindorf. And then you had on this record John McBain on guitar, Joe Calandra on bass, Joe Kleinman on drums, and then Tim Cronin, who was always like kind of the guru of the band. He's credited with Dope, Lights, and Center of the Universe for this record. And each record we go to, I'll tell you the credits for him because it kind of gets stranger and stranger.
So what is this guy's? Is he just like is he a manager? Or?
Nah, he was originally the vocalist, in fact, on like their early stuff, and then he kind of was always part of the band. But he's kind of like the guy in Neurosis who does like all the visuals, who still gets credited as being like a band member, but he does like the effects and different things.
Okay.
He's I don't know. He's just like he's the X factor of the band, I guess. He has some
scores
influence.
Dope for him, I guess.
Yeah, he has some sort of influence, but it's kind of hard to put down on paper, I think.
Okay.
But he's an essential member. When Decibel, which we were,
he's not like a Rudy of a football team. Or
no, nothing quite sideline cheering like that. No, I think he's a little more essential. But
okay.
And the record itself was actually produced by Weindorf and McBain, and McBain wrote that song along with Weindorf, Black Mastermind, which is odd because pretty much after this record, it's going to be mostly Weindorf writing the majority of the Monster Magnet stuff.
I think McBain is it's a Arnold Schwarzenegger analog in The Simpsons.
It's a Simpsons character, yeah, exactly. McBain. But this is we're really only looking at I guess the classic era. I kind of consider Dopes to Infinity be the sort of cutoff, and then 3 years later they reemerge with Power Trip and. What
was the big song off that?
Oh my gosh, Space Trip or Space Lord or something like that.
Space Lord.
By that time, that was 97 when that came out. It was senior year in high school, and that there was frat guys in college listening to that song, and it just kind of had lost the veneer. But they've put out some things in the 2000s, which I don't hate, you know.
I don't think I've heard any of it, actually.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Grindcore Coon, I kind of, we, you know, I think I have like some promos of some of it, and it's like, it's nothing I put on, but I don't hate it.
Well,
you know? Right
now they're on Napalm Records.
Are they? That's pretty crazy. Yeah. So, but what you heard in that last song, Black Mastermind, is sort of an essential ingredient to I guess the early years of these guys who hail from New Jersey, and that's the sort of sprawling psychedelic kind of stoner aspects, especially at the end of that song. You know, I mean, these guys come from punk roots. They come from metal roots. They come from, you even mentioned, and you hear it a lot, this sort of 70s stadium rock kind of stuff.
Oh, totally.
You know, they're clearly influenced by, you know, Hawkwind, which they'll do a cover of Hawkwind on Superjudge.
Reinterpret a Captain Beyond song.
Yeah, the big time Captain Beyond, you know, which they reinterpret that coming up, we'll hear. You know, they do a Willie Dixon cover. I mean, they're kind of all over the place.
It's a Drugs Duty.
Yeah, Drugs Duty. And then what you heard on Black Mastermind especially is another band that you kind of, you know, have to throw out there, you know, which is Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath kind of mixed together. I would even go so far as to say, like, similar to like Pentagram, they have like some Blue Cheer kind of aspects.
I don't really, tell you the truth, I don't hear any Black Sabbath.
I just hear it with the Geezer Butler, like bass playing kind of stuff.
But as
and
far
even
as
some of the wailing, like early Ozzy type vocal approaches that Weindorf does sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, it's not
like chord progression or tone or anything, but
it's nothing like, they're not taking their page out of like Into the Void or something. But they do a cover of Into the Void on Nativity in Black Part 2.
Which I don't have.
The sequel to Nativity in Black Part 1.
First one's good.
Yeah.
Second one, I don't know if there's anything.
Second one, no. It's Slayer does Hand of Doom, which is pretty cool. System of a Down does.
It's no Inagata but
it's no.
That's the best Slayer cover.
Or they do. Slayer does Born to Be Wild for a NASCAR racetrack soundtrack, which is pretty awesome.
That's a pretty revolutionary song at this time.
But you know, so you hear that in this song, and another thing I hear in Black Mastermind, which is just kind of my whole little, you know, thing that probably only somebody like myself would pick up on, is Bullet the Blue Sky from U2, like from Joshua Tree. There's a total tone midway through that sounds like that. So I don't know. I have no idea what these guys were listening to. I do know that they're really big Stooges and MC5 fans. You know, so they're kind of taking that kind of attitude of they're not laid back in anything that they do. They're very like in your face about everything, you know, and sometimes they're throwing so much genre mesh together that can probably be overwhelming to some people's senses, and maybe that's one of the reasons.
At the time, I don't think anything sounded like this at all.
No.
I mean, it was how MC5 always had that kind of like boogie to the music. This stuff is it's anti-grunge, really.
Yeah.
It's not wallowing in self-pity or depravity or anything. It's just, you know, all about like embracing life and being nuts.
Yeah, just the total crazy lifestyle. And I mean, you know, they're drawing upon stuff that like somebody like yourself can totally relate to. And I mean, I myself to some extent as well, because I'm a comic fan, but you being a comic artist, you know, these guys are like immersed in like kind of
60s Kirby stuff and
Jack Kirby, almost like the Marvel Comics kind of ridiculous.
New Gods. I mean, there's a song about what is it? Eon?
Ego, the Living Planet
from Green Lantern.
Dopes to Infinity.
And MODOK from Captain America shows up.
Yeah, I mean, they're just it's fun, you know.
It all kind of makes sense, though. Yeah.
I mean, I would guarantee another band that these guys connect to from the 80s and even into the early 90s in terms of this era would be the Melvins. You know, I mean, that's just another band that I'm sure they felt akin to. And, you know, even like the psychedelic kind of stuff in the 80s, like Butthole Surfers and even early Flaming Lips. I'm sure that was all informing this, you know.
Yeah.
But Monster Magnet never really fit in any scene. They always get lumped in as a sort of stoner rock band.
Which I personally hate that term.
Yeah, it's such a overarching kind of bizarre term, you know.
I mean, it's like calling all like Nickelback stuff like beer rock or something, you know. It's like,
well, and even like grunge itself, which you mentioned before, is an odd term because, you know, some of the bands in the grunge spectrum is so wide that you have bands that are very metallic, like Alice in Chains and Soundgarden, ranging into bands that are really just coming out of like a, like the Who and more just like hard rock influence, like a Pearl Jam. And so then you have people that are like trying to compare Alice in Chains to Pearl Jam. It's like they're not even coming just because they hail from the same like geographical area. You're lumping them into something that's arbitrary.
That's what journalists like to do.
Yeah, exactly. And we have been journalists before, so we understand that that desire to lump things sometimes.
Forest metal.
Yeah, forest metal. That's a great term. And even on this record, on Spine of God, their debut, they do a Grand Funk cover.
Yeah.
Of Sin's.
Flint City representing.
Sin's a Good Man's Brother. Yeah, and us being Michigan folks, probably the next most famous band out of Flint besides Repulsion is Grand Funk. So.
Yeah. I would say Repulsion's above Grand Funk, but
if you ask the average person,
the average person, but we're talking about our listeners, and they're not average people at all.
That's true. You are not.
They're informed.
Yep. And so, anyways, that's kind of where some of the influences are coming from, and one of the reasons we decided to do a record or a band like this is it's fun because they're sort of laid back. There's nothing like over intellectualized about them. They're a band that you and I both have like different almost responses to because of the eras that we sort of came in. We both agree that we like the band, but like I'm more familiar. Well, I'm familiar with the whole era, but like I came in at like kind of Dopes, and you came in like Spine of God, Superjudge, and you didn't really get into Dopes in '95 really because you were.
I was living the Dave Weindorf lifestyle at this point, so I'm having flashbacks as we speak.
Yeah,
but this was a constant, being a teenager in your first apartment with a bunch of dudes. Lots of bong water spilled listening to this for sure.
And it's got that appeal to it. It almost is the soundtrack for that. Like really, really terribly irresponsible era of life.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely decadent, self-involved.
Weindorf is a rock god in the true
his own
sense,
mind. Yes.
So hopefully you have fun with this. I don't know. A lot of times, we've gone from now doing unanimated through Exodus, through Napalm Death and Burzum, and this fits right in with that in its own sort of way. So it's a genre we don't always pay enough attention to. And
stay tuned next week for Lucifer's Friend.
Yeah, sure we'll do something crazy next time. But Spine of God itself is a much more. It seems to be focused in a way, whereas the next record we'll get into a little bit later, Superjudge, is a little bit more sprawling. It's a little bit more out of control, and they kind of then maybe even a little bit lazy, and then they kind of get refocused for Dopes, and we'll get to that at the end of the show. But for my money, if I had to live with one record, it might be Spine of God out of these three. Even though my heart is tight with Dopes because it's such a big sounding record and it's the first one I heard. But I think there's a purity in the sort of early era of any band in that they haven't
like where they first kind of find their voice. Yeah, and everything's kind of clicking.
And so a song like Black Mastermind connects to a record which unfortunately we don't have time to really space in, and it's a record we should definitely recommend.
Space is the key term.
Space is a key term. It's 25 to tab, and this was a record. I remember Grindcore Coon, who was probably the biggest Monster Magnet fan out of my group of friends, and he's been on some of these podcasts before. He did the Melvins one with us, and way back when Repulsion and some of the Enslaved, and I think he even did Anthrax with us, possibly. I can't remember.
The cabin sessions.
The cabin sessions, yeah. But he picked this up. I remember he found it somewhere in Lansing back in high school, and he was the only person I ever knew that had this record until we heard it. You and I heard it at Encore Records in Ann Arbor. They were playing it, and we were both
we found it on the street.
We were both like, man, this. I remember this being not being this awesome, and it was pretty sweet. And then so SPV has re-put that out
again.
Yeah, SPV Steamhammer re-put it out because I think the original 25 tab you can't find anymore. But that sprawling stuff that you heard at the end of Black Mastermind, if you dig that kind of stuff and you're into the Neurosis and even some of like Subarachnoid Space or even any psychedelic kind of stuff that's more instrumental.
Lots of Rise Above stuff I would think would fit in this perfectly.
Wizard and all that. Kind of stuff.
If you're a fan of the Cathedral EPs,
yes, very much so. And it's funny because some of the song titles and things like that you were mentioning kind of connect to some of the mid-period.
What is it? Oddball. Cyclops something?
Well, there's Cyclops Revolution. There's Dinosaur Vacuum. There's
it sounds like Fireball
Elephant
Demon
Bell,
or something. It sounds like weird era Cathedral.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a combination of laziness, drugs, or just like total like fandom, like into like nerdy comic.
Well, I think Lee Dorian and Weindorf have similar kind of interests as far. Well, Dorian's a little bit more of the the monster movie.
He's a little more like B movie,
Japanese stuff, and Planet of the Apes and that kind of stuff. And I think Weindorf's, I mean, he's probably a good 10, 15 years older as well. So he's probably tapping into that even. Probably like his formative years was when Marvel Comics were coming out, all this crazy stuff.
Certainly.
Started experimenting with drugs. It all goes together. Bam.
It works.
Monster Magnet.
So, but so we've got we got a trio of Spine of God tunes up for you. We got Medicine, which was actually the first single that they ever put out, and then we've got Zodiac Lung, which has some. It's kind of a Funhouse Stooges kind of tune mixed with the kind of the slow core of Melvins with a little bit of a prog rock kind of knocked on board. But it's got some like great lyrics in it. It's very like. Almost depressing and sort of sad and pathetic, but that's kind of the beauty of it. And then we'll kind of close this set with the epic Spine of God. And Spine of God, I guess the title track itself, you've got sitars thrown in, you've got a lot of different kind of things kind of working, and I kind of feel like it mimics like the Doors, the end, very much in terms of building into intensity at the very, very end. And I'm sure, again, another 60s psychedelic band that I'm sure Weindorf surrounded himself with, the Doors.
Oh, yeah.
But one thing I want to mention before we head out is the lyrics. I feel like the lyric approach that Weindorf takes on all of these records, it's very abstract and sort of funny, but I think what he does is the same type of thing that like I think Steve Malkmus does with Pavement, and that he like mixes metaphors and he almost like puts weird, bizarre phrases together, and it almost like it sounds absolutely ridiculous, but yet like because of the phrasing it almost gives like meaning, like it sounds almost meaningful and like real. And Pavement was always really, really good at doing that. And Pavement's a much more, I guess, serious band in that they are taken more seriously, but I think Weindorf's coming out of that same kind of almost like a beat poetry meets like Marvel Comics, like just
I don't necessarily know why Pavement's taken more seriously, but
I think they're taken more seriously by critics, and Malkmus always seemed to like have a little bit more meaning behind some of the stuff, but he was always coming out of left field with some of the stuff that he was saying, and
very non sequitur.
Very exactly. So listen for that, and I think you'll enjoy. So we got Medicine, Zodiac Lung, and Spine of God.
To brother of the bell, rise from the light that swallows me whole. Dig yourself. Yeah. the shape of a zodiac lung is beckoning like a bad Christ. It hovers above your head. It's pulling the wool over my life. You don't hear a word I'm saying. You can't cover it with your hair. You can't hide it in your army coat. You got the Milltown demon stare. You forgot all the letters that you wrote. You can't hear a word I'm saying. No, you can't hear a thing at all. When I die, it'll be because of you. There I'll lie, and they'll all point at you. It's fuck-ups like you that always seem to take it all. It's fuck-ups like you that never seem to go away. Shape of the zodiac love, it's like the shape of the back of my hand. And I'll knock you across this room, and I'll bury my head in the sand. You won't feel my love tap, baby. You won't feel a thing at all. When I die, it'll be because of you. There I'll lie, and they're all pointing at you. Fuck-ups like you that always seem to get it all. It's fuck-ups like you who never seem to die. I don't know why.
Spine of God, Zodiac Lung, and Medicine from the debut full length from Monster Magnet. Up next, Superjudge stuff, and this is the record you said kind of really caused the flashbacks for you from '93, their first major label, A&M Records.
Heavy into drug use at this point.
Didn't you say this record reminded you like moving out of your parents' house in high school?
Oh yeah, because I turned 18 when I was in January, and I was still in school for another couple months, and to my parents' chagrin, I moved out to in a apartment with a bunch of guys and just
to be more productive in your homework.
I barely graduated high school, if that tells you anything. So yeah, we'd stay up till like 4 a.m. and be listening to stuff like this with the only light, in the entire room would be like illuminated by the ash of a cigarette,
the glow,
the glow of the ember of a cigarette. And then
much like trenches in World War I, the ember glow.
Yeah, except we weren't fighting anything except our parents.
You could listen to Paradise Lost, Ember's Fire.
Yes,
93 wasn't Shades of God 93.
And then it'd be like at 3 o'clock in the morning, and then you'd hear somebody knock a bong over, and oh shit. I got to get up for school at 7.
Yeah, 7 in the morning.
I don't know how the hell I did that, but
yeah, that's a lifestyle I haven't experienced. I told Mark that I sort of live vicariously through a lot of this stuff in that I have the ability to lose myself and immerse myself in music in a really weird way, in that it can almost like get the buzz from these songs and kind of have some minimal understanding of what it might feel like to be completely out.
But you got to do the full experience.
Yeah, I was gonna say I may have
at this point in your life.
I was gonna say I may have passed that road.
Yeah.
I doubt, as an 8-year veteran of teaching, I should probably start
drug use, intravenous drug use. Yeah, heroin, man, it just makes history so thrilling.
Yeah. Well, I was a big fan of what's his face, Ryan Gosling's movie. I'm drawing a blank where he's smoking crack in the bathroom as a basketball coach. Yeah, it's a great movie.
That was a good movie.
So, but
care about those
again,
kids.
I can live vicariously through the experience of that movie and be just fine. But the two tunes we got for you off this record are Cyclops Revolution and Twin Earth. And Cyclops Revolution has just some crazy lyrics. I mean, they all have crazy lyrics, but great things like I'm gonna eat me a mountain of pills. He's telling you.
Is this the one with fucking your babies and stuff too? Or
that comes later.
Okay,
but he does say, "I ain't got no revolution, but I can fuck an angel." Just like I don't know if that's like religiously blasphemous.
See,
or some of just saying
some
bullshit.
of these lyrics remind me of if I've had a little bit too much to drink and I'm still working in the studio. I write stuff on the dry erase board, and I'll come down, the next morning or whatever, and I'll say like the McCloskey theory. Like, what in the hell is that? And I have to look it up on Google, and it makes no sense.
Sounded brilliant at the time.
Oh, totally. It's like, this is just gonna set the world on fire.
Yeah. So it's a really cool fuzzy riff. Kind of monstrous in a way. Riffs like this that you hear in Cyclops Revolution give a sense of like imminent importance, but yet then when you listen to the lyrics and you're like, there's nothing important happening at all, And then Twin Earth, which was a big single off this record.
Well, it's a reinterpretation of Captain Beyond's Mesmerization Eclipse, which actually Entombed covered as well.
Did they?
Yeah.
Is that on that Sons of Satan double CD?
Sons of Satan Praise His Name or Hail is something.
Yeah, the whole covers record.
Yeah, it's a double disc of covers. Yep. It was on, I forget exactly what. It might have been on Black Juju, actually.
Oh, was
originally.
It? Okay.
Because it's just basically all their EPs and splits and stuff. But, it's a...
What do you know about Captain Beyond?
I've got the one record, the 1972 self-titled record.
Were they British? I can't remember. British, German?
I think they're American.
Were they really?
I think so.
I thought they're...
Were
they like a contemporary, like Sir Lord Baltimore and some kind of stuff?
Yeah. Okay. But they're fantastic. I finally picked that thing up this year when I worked at Relapse in '96, and Jeff Wagner, who I'm trying to think of people who would they know him from now. I mean, he used to work with Metal Maniacs.
Well,
he's working at Decibel now.
He was an editor for Maniacs for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, he just wrote that metal book on Prague progressive metal.
And I'm spacing on the name of it. You go to Bazillion Points and check it out.
Same people that put out the Swedish death metal book and the Only Death is Real
stuff. But he was a huge Captain Beyond fan. I was like, like we both really like Kiss.
He's big Cirith Ungol and Manila Road.
Manila Road. Yeah. And if I would have only gotten into that stuff
Tigers
earlier,
of Pantang.
Yeah. That stuff just wasn't even on my radar at that point. It was so weird.
But this allowed us to rediscover that stuff.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And I have that much more respect for people that flew the flag then.
Yeah. And I think Captain Beyond would be in the Lucifer's Friend, Steamhammer kind of like just off the beaten path, great, Groundhogs, just one of those like
just great rock bands.
Yeah, just great rock that wasn't like on anybody's radar except if you were like a person working at a record store or something, the Mike Johnsons of the world who did the
well,
MC5
yeah, even
show
looking at
with
the cover, I mean, it's just like a guy in almost like a disco outfit with an afro, like dancing in space. It's like,
which almost summarizes Monster Magnet's entire career in a nutshell. Really. I remember the video for Twin Earth was pretty cool. It was on a VHS tape I had that had Paw videos and Soundgarden videos, which were both on A&M Records as well.
Was that one of those Concrete Corner?
Yeah, but it was things? Like a VHS tape that had the music videos, and
they'd like give it to you if you bought 2 records or something. Like, here's a free VHS tape.
I don't even know where I got it. Yeah, something like that. So, but Superjudge, this is it has its moments, but it also has, it relies too heavily on covers. You got the Hawkwind cover, Brainstorm. You got Evil Is Going On, Willie Dixon, old blues guy cover. Dinosaur Vacuum, which is a cool song. It's kind of mock Panama Van Halen riff, but
it's
utterly retarded
lyrics.
Yeah, just retarded and repetitive. A song if we had more time, I would have liked to have played is Face Down, which is another single, kind of a great like Alice in Chains meets Stooges solo in the middle. But Black Balloon's a pretty cool tune with sitar and stuff, and plays off a Nirvana riff, which you noticed. But it's very uneven. It
still did pretty well, didn't it?
It did okay, but it came out unfortunately like in the midst of grunge, and it was so metallic that people didn't really know where to fit it. But I think
probably actually by today's standards, it probably did fantastic.
Yeah, no doubt. Record industry.
last year the record actually Lipitor, the cholesterol drug, made more as a single drug than the entire record industry, $10 billion.
Wow. Yeah. Well, it went down 20% last year. It was the largest drop that they've had, so pretty crazy. I heard that on NPR the other day.
Whole thing's gonna fall apart, just like the whole world. We got 1 year left.
Yeah. Well, today we had tsunami and earthquakes in Japan.
Yeah, as we're listening to Monster Magnet and then watching all this stuff on CNN muted. It's kind of surreal.
Yeah, pretty crazy, But anyways, and then we'll transfer from Superjudge into a record that I think is takes a lot of the elements of Superjudge and does them so much better, and that's Dopes to Infinity, a Decibel Hall of Fame record, way back in issue 26 with Mastodon on the cover back in 2006. And this is a record that Mark is not as familiar with, even though you've heard a song or two here and there. But This is for my money. It's a masterpiece, and so we'll go from Cyclops Revolution in Twin Earth.
I think we actually didn't we play Negasonic Teenage Warhead on one of the best of shows?
No, because this is 90. Maybe we did on the 95 show.
I'm almost positive we did.
Maybe we did. Yeah. News to me. I
just remember the name.
Yeah, maybe we talked about playing it. Maybe
that could have
cut
been
it short. But and then we'll go to Negasonic Teenage Warhead, which was kind of the first major single that kind of blew up for Monster Magnet. They had a great video on MTV, produced by
Gore
Verbinski of Pirates of the Caribbean, The Ring fame. So small world. But pay attention to the lyrics in Negasonic Teenage Warhead. It's kind of making fun of the sort of grunge, people who are
that sounds like a Sonic Youth album.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah. It's kind of the professional, sad malcontent, kind of everything's bad and everything, Whereas Dave Weindorf is just shooting heroin and loving life at this point, so he's mocking those kind of people.
Hanging out with dancing girls.
And also Grant Morrison of comic book fame named an X-Men character after this song. He's a big fan of Monster Magnet. So,
what was the name of the?
I think it was.
Was it Warhead or Negasonic or Teenage?
I think it was Negasonic, but I don't quote me on that one. I haven't followed X-Men as closely in the last few years. I used to be the expert.
My brain's getting smaller and smaller as I get older.
And then we'll close this set out with "Look to the Orb" for the warning, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we come back. So enjoy Cyclops Revolution, Twin Earth, Negasonic Teenage Warhead, and "Look to the Orb" for warning.
As a nine-hand squeeze. find me a river of tears. I'm gonna crawl back in my room now and boil up some fear. I'm gonna eat me a mountain, a mountain of pills. I ain't got no revolution, but I can fucking kill. Yeah! Saw your face last night on the tube. Strong fine snake in a sucker's vacuum. 15 clicks and it's time to say bye. 15 trips and a love that won't die. Myself kill the world today.
That was Look to the Orb for The Warning, Negasonic, Teenage Warhead, Twin Earth, and Cyclops Revolution. And one thing about Look to the Orb for The Warning, besides it being making a very minor appearance in The Matrix, is the solo. You and I were kind of talking about it. I was kind of saying, like, doesn't this remind you of something? You said it really kind of reminded you of Neurosis almost.
Yeah.
Kind of like falling away and... I don't know.
It reminded me of something off Through Silver and Blood. Just the kind of building of the riff and everything.
And that's interesting because this is a band that I think struggled up until this point to really find a scene. They were always kind of like on their own, rogue agents. They're from New Jersey.
Yeah, I mean, who did they tour with? I saw them. Here's this is the worst possible time to fucking see these guys. They played with Rob Halford solo I think it was off the Resurrection album or maybe pre-Resurrection album. And then it was Monster Magnet with nobody but Dave Weindorf when he's clean.
Well, yeah, he fires everyone pretty much after Dopes to Infinity.
And then Blaze Bayley, Iron Maiden.
Whew. So you saw him on the Power Trip tour, which is 97.
They were terrible.
Yeah.
They were absolutely awful. And they played during the day.
Yeah, that's no good.
And then after that, Halford came on a motorcycle. I was like, all right, this is making it a little bit better.
Maybe it'll be all right. Yeah, because you go from like a record like Dopes to Infinity, which has this like warm, crisp kind of focus attack, to a record like Power Trip, which I've never heard all of Power Trip in one sitting, to tell you the truth. So I can't like claim to be intimate with it, but I've heard the singles, and I just knew it was a band that would like I was kind of done with at that point.
Yeah, I heard a lot. I mean, even them playing the old stuff live, it was really uncompelling.
Well, I'm sure they were. Weindorf was a mess. He takes 3 years off. I don't even know if he was completely clean at that point. Or
he looked like he was strung out.
Yeah, he
like
alienated. Really I know he got in fights with most of the guys who are on this record. No, I forgot to mention that Ed Mundell has come in to replace McBain on guitar, and he'll go on and form like Atomic Bitchwax and some of which I think they were on. Meteor City or TMC. One
at
of those
some point they were kind of all over the place.
But again, so like Weindorf was like the center of the band, and when he sort of goes off the rails after Dopes, like oddly enough, they get more popular. Their music gets worse because, like I said, Space Lord was huge. I mean, just everywhere. And that was 97, but
yeah, obviously it wasn't on their live performance at this point because they were duds.
Yeah, and I've never seen them live. I've always kind of wanted to, although I think I'd like to see them in a smaller capacity. I think
that's probably what they'd be playing now.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Being on Napalm Records and all.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. And I heard okay things about their new record. I haven't heard it. I think I heard the one previous to it, but back in like 2007.
See, they're similar to like Nebula. Like I've got 3 Nebula records. That's all I need.
Well, I guess they're I think their records now in the 2000s have that Nebula, Fu Manchu kind of like just they're all sort of the same. You know? I think they were fairly dynamic up until Dopes, and then they kind of just lost a lot of that focus. And
you can only burn so bright for so long before you fizzle out.
No doubt. But this is if you're struggling to buy a Monster Magnet record, you can't go wrong with Dopes to Infinity or Spine of God or even Superjudge for that matter.
Compared to Power Trip. Yeah.
I mean, Dopes to Infinity, a couple of the other tunes that we just didn't get a chance to mention. You mentioned Ego, the Living Planet, pretty sweet tune. Dead Christmas, which is one of my favorite Christmas songs of all time. I said "fuck you" on Christmas.
I still prefer No Presents for Christmas.
That's true. They're right up there. They're right up there. That's maybe an old school favorite for me because I heard that way before the King. But what we're gonna end with tonight is another tune from Dopes to Infinity, and this is sort of it's the longest song on the record. It's called Third Alternative. It's very anti-commercial in a way. It's a giant build. I would say it's one of the more contemplative songs that these guys ever did. And just like you were talking about some of the earlier Spine of God stuff, this is like very fever dreamish. It's like almost like this is very much the non sequitur, almost like Burroughs kind of like type stuff where like nothing makes sense. And this is the If We Fuck Each Other's Babies song that you were making reference to earlier. And it's just, I mean, it's a great, monstrous, doomy riff that it's sort of built upon, but it's mixed with sort of a warm, analog kind of 70s fuzz that sort of warms it up a bit. But it's definitely fairly nihilistic. It's amongst the most, like, bleak songs that these guys ever wrote. And I think it's a state of the mind of these guys at this time because they weren't getting along. Weindorf was pissing everybody off. You know, I don't know. So it's a good way to sort of close things out. But this is a band, you know, again, maybe some of you out there, I'm sure, you know, never really warmed up to these guys because, especially if you're younger, you came in when things like Power Trip were popular and you would have easily dismissed these guys and never had any reason to go back and listen to them. But I think, you know, this stuff stands up with the early 90s Clutch and even some of like the sort of early 90s, late 80s Corrosion Conformity, which, you know, those are bands that like Caius, you know, those were bands that were doing things that were like against the grain on some level and maybe weren't as beloved at the time. But I think history's proven that they've had some kind of level of influence on especially the late 90s, early 2000s stoner rock scene or whatever the hell you want to call it. But
air quotes were just used there.
Air quotes. But, you know, so they're a band that's worth being considered, especially, you know, any band that's coming and using Captain Beyond, the Stooges, MC5, and Grand Funk Railroad. It's like they're informative.
So they're a rock and roll band. They're like when every time Motorhead comes out, they're like, "Hello, we're Motorhead and we play rock and roll."
Yeah, I think Monster Magnet. I think Dave Weindorf has that sort of Lemmy, you know, I'm never gonna die kind of feeling.
Reminds me very much of Bobby Liebling. His story is, you know,
he's an East Coast kind of guy too, New Jersey, Baltimore.
He's the more successful version of Bobby Liebling.
Yeah, that makes sense. Even with sweet mustaches and all too.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yep. So that's a good way. So
except I think Liebling was heroin, but he was a big fan of crack too.
Was he?
Yeah.
Okay. I know he liked the speedier stuff.
Well, and actually, South by Southwest, that's happening.
They're premiering the Pentagram
documentary.
Our good friend
Sean Pelletier, Mr. I'm not sure exactly what his title is that season. Seasons of Mist, but he's kind of the honcho there in the U.S. branch. And there's a really good clip that's on. You can find it on YouTube of Liebling basically holding his crack pipe, and Sean sitting there with everybody knows him as Pellet.
Yeah,
basically writing out a contract saying, "I, Bobby Liebling, will stop smoking crack, or Sean Pelletier can have my record collection."
Wow!
And then they show it, and it's like in subtitles, "It's an awesome record collection."
That's awesome. That's pretty sweet.
So this thing's been going. I mean, they filmed it in like 2007 up until I think kind of recently. So it looks really interesting.
Yeah. So be on the lookout for that, and that connects back to our documentaries piece that we did a few episodes ago, which maybe revisit it down the road. Rumor has it, based on some conversations we had a few weeks ago.
Well, of one specific documentary that has shaped the lives of many people
that we purposely left off in hindsight because we wanted to spotlight one, but. Anyways, let us know what you thought of Monster Magnet, especially if you're new to the band or, again, you dismissed them in the way that you very easily could have. Let us know, requiempodcast@gmail.com. Check us out on Facebook or leave us something on iTunes.
Star ratings are great.
Ratings, yeah.
So far we've got, I don't know how many. We've
33 or 34 star ratings.
I think it's more than that. No.
Is it? Okay.
But we're 5 stars. Yeah. We have no bad reviews. And the more good reviews we get from people, especially if you can give a little bit of a comment, that's always fantastic.
We got some really great comments, especially last month in February.
Yeah, we did.
Some really, really positive things there. So, go to the website if you are interested in picking up some merchandise, or if you're interested, like my sister was, in being an executive producer. Yeah. Thanks again to Jill for executive producing this episode. And
it's so easy. All you got to do, you make a donation. If your donation's the highest one of the week, you become the executive producer of that episode.
There you go. So
helps everybody.
Yep. Helps show costs and all that good stuff. So
helps us go to Metal Fest.
Yeah, which
it'd be nice if we got, maybe if there's a really big donor out there that would like to has a private jet or something, take us down to Death Fest this year.
That'd be sweet.
That'd be awesome.
Sweet. Or if you just want to stop by and say hi, maybe you can find us.
Well, we need to get you a Requiem Podcast T-shirt. I've got mine. We should both be sporting ours at least one of the 4 days.
I can walk around with my mug at least,
Hey.
So my travel mug. So maybe I'll just borrow Luke's, who won't be going this year, unfortunately. So
there you go.
He's running a marathon in Traverse City. It's okay, Metal Luke. We still love you. You're still sporting the cause, but
you're missing out this.
So we're gonna close things out tonight with Third Alternative from Dopes to Infinity. So enjoy this fever dream of a stoner, whatever song you want to call it, rock and roll. They play rock and roll music.
That's right.
So I'm Jason,
and I'm Mark.
Enjoy.
vision, and I kiss you on the phone.